vivos, what's been changed? Well, we no longer have even arguably acceptance of donations inter vivos by taking of immovables by taking possession. We used to have that arguably. Now that notion of tacit acceptance applies only to manual gifts of corporeal movables. That's different. Let's see, what else? Some of the rules on the consequences of revocation of donations, especially for ingratitude, have changed. Now you've got all that lease pendens stuff that's required in order to make your claim. If you're a donor trying to revoke for ingratitude, you've got that lease pendens requirement if you want to make that effective against third persons. That's all new. What else is different?
Pursuing ingratitude revocation like the donor.
Yes, very good. It used to be the case that ingratitude was a strictly personal offense, strictly personal to the donee. So if the donee died and then his kids inherited his property, the donor couldn't revoke it from them. Not anymore. Now the property can be revoked from the donee's successors. There may be some others, but I have not thought about this systematically. So those are the ones that occur to me off the top of my head. Yes.
Is it kind of in line with the Article 1544 and acceptance? So you're saying that does change the whole works case and assistance to charity, that it has to be immovable, it can't be.
Well, what it does, that particular new article does, is to codify works. That would be the way that I would say it. Codify works and then reject Sisters of Charity and Cotton.
And also in that article, it doesn't appear that the donor requires notice of the acceptance. That's still a jurisprudential rule.
No, there's no longer a requirement that the donor be notified of the acceptance in order for the donation to be effective. That was suppressed. And I hate that because that was such a wonderfully complex little rule. I always loved putting it on the exam. It's to make the exam ever harder. Other questions? Yes, sir.
The rules on revocation. Is it correct that you do not need a date, even though it says it needs to be in the form of a testament for your express revocation?
Okay, we're talking about, for a second I thought you were talking about revocation of donations inter vivos, but you're talking about revocation of donations mortis causa, right? And your question is, again, what? You're going to have to repeat it because I was in a different part of the juridical universe.
You need a date on that. I was reading an outline part, but you didn't necessarily have to date the document.
Well,
although it does say it has to be in the form of a testament.
But you don't. Don't read the outline. Don't read your notes. Read the law. 1607(3) tells you you can do it without putting a date on there. That's a general revocation you can do without putting a date on it. You just have to write it in your own handwriting, sign it, and you have to clearly identify the testament you're revoking. Then 1608, I don't think we've got a parallel provision for that. 1608, paragraph 1, does require that it be in the form of a testament. So now that I think about it, I guess there's no way of particularly revoking it. Well, that's not true. There it is. There's 4. Clearly revokes the provision or legacy by a signed writing on the testament itself. Again, that wouldn't have to be dated. So we've got a way of generally revoking the testament as a whole. It doesn't require a date. Just requires your signature and a writing. And then we have a way of particularly revoking an individual legacy on the testament by writing in your handwriting, I revoke, and then signing it. It has to be signed too. It doesn't have to be dated. Yes, sir.
Have you had a chance to confirm if the topics that you said weren't going to be tested on aren't on the test?
I have not. I've been busy all day long. I have not even had a chance to look at the keys. Yes, sir.
If you have a child born during marriage, the kid is presumed to be, or the husband and the mother is presumed to be the father of the child. Now,
benefit of those of you watching this by YouTube may not have been able to hear Mr. Scandard, he's asking a fairly complicated paternal affiliation question. It's based upon a hypothetical we had in class. Do you happen to remember the hypothetical number?
I think it's 32.
You think it's in the 32s? Because I'd like to give this hypothetical number to everybody who's here present and everybody who will be watching this. 31?
Maybe around. I have it 31, but.
Does anybody have the materials with him or her?
Yes,
31? Okay, the answer to 31 is the little bugger now has two dads he can inherit from, and he has two dads who can inherit from him. Mr. Scandard's question stated in the abstract is this. If you've got a child who is presumed to have a daddy under one of those presumptions of paternity in Article 185 or 186, and then he goes on, the child, and brings a filiation action under 197 against another man, what impact does the successful 197 action have upon the relationship between the presumed daddy and the child insofar as inheritance rights are concerned? And the answer is nothing at all. That's the whole point. That's why we say about this particular scenario that the result is that you can end up with two dads. You had your presumed dad, and you still have your presumed dad. You can inherit from him, and he can inherit from you. But now you've got a legally declared dad pursuant to a paternity action brought under 197. He can inherit from you. You can inherit from him. And if you can convince another jury that yet a third man is really your dad, then he'll be able to inherit from you too, and you'll be able to inherit from him, and you'll still be able to inherit from the first guy, the presumed dad, and he'll be able to inherit from you, and then the second dad that you got, you'll still be able to inherit from him, and he'll still be able to inherit from you. So keep going, and you can multiply patrimonies from which you can inherit. Mr. Hamilton.
As a general rule, collation is only required of descendants, but aren't there cases in which someone else would be required to collate, like a plan just to get when legacy of the court is not classified?
Mr. Hamilton is asking a question about collation. In particular, he wants to know if there would ever be a case in which someone other than a child or grandchild or some other descendant might be the target of a collation action. In other words, might be compelled to collate. And the reason he's worried about that has to do with forced heirs rights. Well, Mr. Hamilton, we have a problem here because we've got some legislation smack dab in the middle of the law of collation that addresses your question. There's just one problem with it. It's in the wrong place. And anybody who can think his way out of a paper bag, which unfortunately is not as many people as you would hope, would be able to figure out that it's in the wrong place. It's really a rule about reduction, not about collation. And all the French eggheads and all the Argentine eggheads and all the Italian eggheads, they've all said this over and over and over and over and over and over for 200 freaking years. Maybe two people know about it in Louisiana, but in any event, I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going to tell you what the law really is as opposed to what it appears to be. Collation can never, ever, ever, never be exercised against anybody other than a descendant. Now, if there was some gift to a third person, and that gift is the only thing, well, it's the only asset that could possibly now be used to satisfy the forced heirs claim, the forced heir can get it. But he's not going to get it by collation. He's going to get it by reduction. Okay? I mean, this is an area of the law that's very confused because of the way that the legislation's written. But the legislation it's in the wrong place. I mean, the legislation